Good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I know I've had a chance to speak to some of you already and get to know a little bit about who you are and where you've come from. My name is Buckland. I'm from England and currently looking to move to Europe for all the reasons you can guess at, yes. So if anybody's needing it, got a nice place for me to come and live, I'm very open to offers. So my background, very briefly, is a combination of psychologist, and organizational change specialist, and Lean Six Sigma specialist, and cultural change person, and all of these different disciplines I work with. And the reason I try and work with so many different disciplines is because organizations are very, very complex things. So if we think about one of the smallest organizations is a family, and how complex can that get? You know, so maybe at Christmas time getting together. So if even the smallest of organizations are complex, how easy is it for us to make changes? How easy it is for us to make the right changes? How easy is it for us to work together? So I work with organizations that sometimes they're going down fast and they're desperate for help, and other times they're going up fast and they're desperate for help. And sometimes they're plateaued and they're desperate for help. But you get an idea who I typically work with? So hopefully you're not desperate for help. Hopefully your things are going great for you as an organization. Hopefully things are you're in control of what's happening. But either which way, the material that I want to share with you today, and then I'll give you a little bit more of the background when I do my presentation on Friday morning, is the absolute basics of how to keep things going in a positive direction, whether the company's doing that, or going back down again. Yeah? So it really doesn't matter what I'm saying to you today, it generalizes. The other thing that's very important to me is a very simple idea. And that's this: if it can't be done by everybody, it's too complicated. Yeah? So if it can't be done by everybody, it's too complicated. So we need something that's going to be able to be worked on a continuous basis by every single team member, whether they're the CEO or the new person who's just joined. Now, obviously, the CEO's got different responsibilities and therefore different input to the process. But this is the principle that I want to give you. So maybe some of what I'll show you today will seem a little bit unfamiliar, and therefore maybe a little bit complicated, but trust me, like any other skill, once you've got the hang of it, it's easy. It's desperately easy. In fact, so easy you're thinking, why haven't we always been doing that? Okay, so that's my hope today. You'll get enough information that you say, I can understand that well enough, I can take that back to my workplace and give it a go. This is my goal for you, okay? And it doesn't matter which bit of the business you work in or what level of seniority you're in. Okay, so quick check. Am I speaking at an okay speed? Yeah, because funnily enough, English is my first language, and I'm an Englishman, so it's also my only language. Forgive me if there's any other English people in the room who speak more than one language. Okay, so that's that. Just one more principle before we get started, and that's this. I firmly believe that everybody is a good person and they come to work to do a good job. They have the right to change my mind later, but this is where I start from, okay? So for some of you who are in senior positions, say, we could do so much if I just had better people. No, you've got great people, you just may not have the great environment or the great systems, and by the word systems, I don't just mean technology, I mean how everything works together, the ecosystem. So my experience is this, is when I work with organizations, I quite often start with people who have fed up, they've given up trying, they don't think anything's possible, the answer to everything is new IT, all of these problems. I see these all the time, just as I'm sure you do from time to time. But what I always find is that with the right environment, with the right tools, with the right information, everybody can come together and make great things happen, even the things that everybody thought was impossible. And this is what I want to give you. Today is a little bit of an insight into how that's possible. So today's workshop, it's called Doctor, I've Got a Pain in My Process. That's a little bit of a fun theme, but the logic to this is how often do we go maybe to see a doctor and we give them the symptom? And maybe our doctor then gives us a treatment for the symptom. And then what are we happening? We're back again, and we're back again, and we're back again. Now, my father was a doctor. And what was very important to him was getting to the root cause of things. Stop the person from being sick in the first place. This is what I want to share with you. Okay, so I'm going to give you a small amount of technical information that you need in order to do the exercises, and then most of the time was going to be spent in the exercises themselves. And here's some very, very straightforward ideas, but I want to introduce you to the idea of value demand and failure demand. These are two terms that ought to be in common use throughout your organization all the time. But that takes a little while to get in, largely because that word there. Who likes that word? It brings all kinds of bad feelings to the front, doesn't it? Yeah? I had a brilliant quote just a couple of days ago. The amazing thing that is our world today is evolution's response to a whole series of failures. Yeah? And that's our organizations too. The processes we've got, the checks and balances we've got, the legal systems we're having to work within, they're pretty much all failure driven. So don't see failure as a bad word, see it as an amazing word, because it's the data you need for getting even better. And you're trying to beat your competition, you're trying to beat the other companies. The better you are at handling failure positively, the more you will beat them. Fact. Yeah? Okay. So here we go. Here's what typically happens. And you'll see this again on Friday morning, but you need it for today as well. What normally happens in any organization I work in, and I'm not a specialist in credit, I'm not an O2C person, I work in all kinds of different environments, but in every single environment, what there is demand comes in, work to be done. That invoice that has to be allocated, that sales order that needs to be processed, that car that needs to be built. Doesn't matter, it's all just demand. And over here, we then have the process box and the resources box. And the resources are what we use to operate the process. And what we try and do is we convert that demand into whatever it was, output. Hopefully giving the customer what they wanted, when they wanted, right first time. And I know you're all great companies, and that's exactly what happens, yes? Right first time, every time, on time? Yep. Okay. Good. I'm glad I'm with the right audience. That's sorted. Okay. So in here, we've got all this kind of stuff. We've got people. We've got skills. We've even got things like attitude all fits in this, but we've got our ICT systems, yeah? I'm not going to mention any particular names, but I'm sure if I came across, you're probably all working with broadly similar ERP systems or something like that now, trying to do the same thing. We've got our offices, et cetera, et cetera. All of that stuff is brought together for the sole purpose of trying to convert that demand into output. All fairly obvious so far, hopefully? Yeah, not telling you anything that's not already known to you. Good. Here's the big mistake that people start with. And you can't blame people for this, and I'm not blaming you for it if you're the same. People treat the demand they've got to deal with as if it's all value demand. Right? In other words, if it's got to be done and it's my job to do it, then surely it's value demand if I deal with it. Yeah? So when somebody phones up to say, why hasn't my order progressed? Yeah? Well, I've done a great job. I looked it up. I found out on the system. I told them precisely why the order hasn't progressed. What did the customer really want? Did they want to be phoning you? No. No, it's already failure driven. So what happens is sometimes what we produce for the customer isn't right first time, or isn't on time, or was never produced at all, or some such thing, and that then comes back as a new demand, a chasing call, or a complaint, or a dispute, or some such thing. But also, are our processes perfect? Well, if we make a mistake internally, that comes back as something that needs to be sorted and fixed. Yeah? And guess what happens is the more failure demand there is, the more the demand is, which means the more capacity we require to fix things, which means we've got less capacity for doing things, which means more failure demand because we've rushed something or we prioritize something which led to somebody else chasing. Do you see the vicious circle that builds up here? Yeah? So the next time you say, we need more staff, I'm sure none of you have ever said that, Yeah. Ask yourself the question, is it because there's more value demand coming in? Look, our revenue, we've actually got 20% more orders coming in this month. Okay, now I'm going to buy that. That's 20% more value demand potentially, unless it was a temporary blip to somebody's rush ordering at the end of a year or something. So have we got more value demand? If the answer to that is no, if you're finding yourself needing more staff, but you're not getting more real work, more value work, I promise you what you've got is a vicious circle of failure demand feeding itself. This is killing your company. Okay? I'll save some numbers for the final presentation on Friday, but just think for yourselves, what percentage of your own day is failure driven? And what percent of it is value driven? For those of you in management positions, I'm sorry guys, it's not a good number. Yeah, all right. It's a very, very difficult situation for people to be in. So this is the failure driven demand. Okay. Now, here's the next problem. Traditional change programs in most modern day organizations require what? If you're going to start a new change program, what's it normally preceded by that the management team will sign off? No? I come to you, I know you're in a management position, so I'll pick on you if that's all right. So I'm going to put in place this change program. I need to take some team out for a little while to get this thing fixed. What would you ask from me? A budget, yeah? And against the budget you would want a? Yeah, forecast of benefit, business case, something like that. Yeah, totally logical. Here's the problem. In most cases, the failure-driven demand is made up of all the small stuff. Yeah, you're probably never going to create a business case for getting rid of the failure demand, because each individual bit of it would never, you could fix it probably before you finish producing the business case. Yeah? Or if you can't do that, you don't know what the business case is because you haven't done the root cause analysis yet to find out all the different effects of the fact that because that was delayed, that customer lost confidence, which meant they said to somebody else who then decided not to place an order. How do you get a business case for that kind of problem? You can't. So the traditional management tool of the business case for driving this kind of change does not work. I'm sure it works great for building a brand new factory or launching a brand new mobile phone device or something like that. I'm not saying it doesn't work in all cases, but it doesn't work for this. But here's the problem. When you stack this together, for any organization I've ever been into, it's always the single biggest. If you put it all together, it's the largest business case that company's ever seen for change. Yeah? And that's the catch-22 for people. So what I want to do is show you a very, very simple technique that you can use. We'll go into a bit more detail on in some of the other aspects of it on Friday, but that you could use in order to start fixing this stuff on a daily basis in a very simple way that can be led from the front line. The managers can still be in control of because the data becomes available when it's needed. And that means the managers are in control of the changes and the front line are in control of the improvements, which is a very, very powerful combination because it's then the whole team working together. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now, you'll see that on all of the tables there's some post-it notes. Now, because the numbers have gone up slightly, I'm going to reduce the amount of opportunity each one of you has to write because I need to make sure we've got enough time to get everything done. So what I'd like you to do is for each of you to write 4 post-it notes of what you think in your particular part of the business, in your particular role, what are very typical forms of failure demand that are chewing up your time and your team's capacity. Yeah? Now, it doesn't matter what bit of the business you're in, so you're going to come up with different answers. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, we're going to come up with different answers. Just before you start writing, I just need to do something else. Sorry, that's fine. Okay. Every process can be improved. Okay. And here's a weird one. Do people familiar with post-it notes? Yeah. So you write on them and you rip it off and you go whack, don't you? And what happens is these peel up and fall off. So if you want to save a lot of time and energy, because with post-it notes, recording them is very good if you can have them nice and flat, because then you can photograph them. So just to try and make my life and each other's lives easier, if you can lift the post-it note up from underneath, it will automatically sit flat instead of ripping it off like that. Okay, so there's a little trick for you, lift it up from underneath. So please write yourselves 4 different types of failure demand, and I'm going to say one more thing before you get started. I want you to write problem statements. Problem statements. Now, what do I mean by that? You might say one of the most common things that's driving you potty and you chewing up your time is communication. Yeah, that's a common one. Communication's a good thing. Yeah, I want you to write the problem. The problem is I can't get hold of people who need to make decisions. The problem is everybody thinks it's somebody else's job. Write the specific problem in a sentence, okay, so that people can read. So everybody, 4 problems each that are chewing up the time and capacity of your business, your team. Just put them in any random place on the piece of paper once you've written it. Two, 4, 6. So we're looking for about 24 items on here in total. If in doubt, just check your inbox. Look at the last 5 emails. You won't be stuck for your ideas. 2, 4, 6, 7. So we're looking for about 30 on here, 28 on here. About 7. Have you run out? You see, you've got to watch him. Brilliant. Okay, so that one's too non-specific. If we can just start thinking what type of billing issues, you can start waiting for what. See if you can tighten some of these up a little bit. Yep. Right. Which processes? What's wrong with them? Yeah? Yeah? Just give an example. Okay. What's that causing? What's the limitations causing? What's problems it driving? What's the extra work it's creating? Likewise, lack of communication. What's happening as a result of that lack of communication? Is it there's mistakes being made? Is it things being delayed? Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll just give you 2 more minutes. Just get a few more down. Try and think in terms of demand, things that make you have to do something. So not just the issues, but what is it you're having to do? Your time is used up because of this. Yeah. Okay. Right. By all means, you can add to these as you go along. If you think of another really good one, by all means, just jot it down and add it in. But the first thing that I wanted to mention to you is, again, is the focusing on the demand. Demand is something that requires you to act. And every single action is either value-driven or failure-driven. There is no grey. There's no amber. There's no traffic lights here. Yeah, it is either value-driven, it's in line with the purpose of the organization, it's the first time that it's been requested, it's from the real customer, whoever that might be. Obviously, internal customers can be valid as well in certain situations. And everything else is failure driven. Everything. 100% of everything. Yeah? All right? The more your brain gets good at spotting the difference between value-driven demand and failure-driven demand, the bigger the potential your business has to become perfect. Yeah? Now, you could look at me and go, perfect's not possible. I know that. But if you're closer to perfect than the competition, you're doing great. Yeah? And the thing is if you think you can't get to perfection, you don't even try. The process that I'm showing you here will take you closer to perfection than not following it. Yeah? And over a period of time, you can get very close to perfect. It is quite staggering. Okay. So, you've got some information on here. Now, what I'll show with you on Friday is an introduction to a more scientific process. Obviously, I've got a variety of people in the room, different organizations, different IT systems, different everything. So I'm just going to illustrate the process. This is not the quality of data that you'd normally be working with, but it's good enough data for us to do the exercise today. But normally, what I'd be doing at this point is I'd be going through every single one of these line by line and saying, okay, well, who wrote this one? What did you actually have to do? So we need some kind of prioritization process, don't we? Yeah? Because if I were to ask you, I'm going to pick on yourself here, and I'm going to say, right, I'd like you to go at the same time both to Berlin and to Moscow. I've just set you up to fail, haven't I? Yeah? Okay, here's my point, is you cannot possibly be trying to do two things at the same time. Yes, I know I'm a man, and I know some of you in the room are women, and you think, yeah, yes, well, if you're a woman, no, the fact remains, and James will back me up on this, the fact remains that women can't multitask either. They just don't screw up as badly as men when multitasking. There you go. That's it. Yeah. So if you're trying to, so if you're trying to do two things at once, you are planning to do neither of them properly. Yeah. Guess what that leads to? More failure demand. Why would you do that? It's not logical, right? So what we need to know is what's the one thing that we're going to do first. Yeah, because if you're already really busy and you're trying to get the orders out the door and you're trying to get the bank, the reconciliation statements done in time and all of these different things that you're trying to deal with, if you're also trying to make things better, you can only fix one thing at a time. Okay, so you need to know which one thing it is. Okay, and this is where the alternative to the business case process needs to come in. Okay, so what I'd like you to do next is work with you in your tables with the data that you've now pulled together, and I want you to work silently, unless, and I'll give you the unless in a moment, but I want you to work silently and pick all together at the same time, so chaos should reign. This is a good thing, is pick these up, and if you think that different goals is the same issue as double work, then just put them next to each other like that. You with me? Yeah? So what you're doing is you're putting things together that sound like they're referring to roughly the same thing. And so those two suddenly sit nice together, and that's like nothing else, so it sits out on its own. So cluster things together that are saying basically the same thing, and leave out on their own as orphans anything that doesn't have anything else like it. Everybody clear? Yeah, and the unless, the only reason why you're allowed to ask a question and discuss is if you do not know what the post-it note says or means. Yeah, so you can only clarify what something means from the original author. In which case, update the post-it note. And try and make it very clear the gaps between the different clusters. So we've got cluster 1, cluster 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8. They're together. Fantastic. Well done. Good job. Yeah, very efficient team here. How are you getting on? So you're putting your clusters in rows, are you? Is that in columns? Is it? That's a very nice way. That really works well. There's a 3M app that you could just show your iPad to it all, and it does. It's quite clever. Right. And you just keep moving things around until you all agree with everything. So if somebody said, no, actually, that's nothing to do with that, and they can put it over there and say, no, it really is. And that's the other time where you have a discussion. Yeah. And normally when that happens, it means that the post-it note's not clear. And there's, in fact, two separate things. And person one thinks it means X, and person two thinks it means Y. So take that post-it note off and rewrite two post-it notes, and you got one there and one there. Now you've got a better picture. Yeah. Okay. Good. You're done? So you got, is that one or two clusters across there?
It's almost the same. We create the bridge here.
You can't do that. What you can do. Yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are those two clusters or one? Two different ones, okay. And that separate one. Okay, fantastic, good. So we're just nearly there on this team. Okay, fantastic. Good. Well done, everybody. Now notice, like I said, okay, we're working with relatively small amounts of data here and very quickly pulled together data. But notice what you've all been able to do. You've worked together as a team to generate the data, and you've worked together as a team to organize the data. You haven't had to involve the data analysts or specialist Six Sigma people, or do you see what I mean? You've all just got on with it together. Now, have you done a perfect job? I know the answer's no. Does it matter? No. Because the point is you've worked together as a team and you now have a shared understanding of the bigger picture. Yeah? And every mistake that you make along the way will become obvious later. So don't worry about trying to be perfect. I know in your industry that might be a very difficult idea, perhaps, I don't know. But you want every number to be absolutely correct, etc. Of course you do. But in this process, the important thing is shared understanding. Because remember, what we're trying to do right now is develop a clear understanding of what one priority thing are we going to try and fix first. Yeah, we've got to fix them all, because that's where we're going. We're going to perfect. But which one are we going to do first? And as the team works together, I could talk to any one of you now individually, and each one of you would be able to explain to me what you've done on your sheets. Yeah? This is a very powerful, very engaging technique. Have we done anything really complicated? No? No? In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you'd done something very similar before. What I'm just doing is putting it into a repeatable sequence, a process series that you can use to drive perfection. Okay? So the step one was we gathered some data around the nature of failure demand. Step two is we've done what's called the affinity diagram. Yeah? What are the things that are now have affinity? Step three, or it's actually part of two, is we now need to make some sense of the data we've got. So I shall pass you these out, and as a team, what I'd like you to do is come up with the best description for each of your clusters, still using problem statement language. So you're going to go up a level. So over here, I've got two things that you've put together. Please, I'll just borrow yours if I may. So system limitations not reflecting our needs. So the system is not actually doing what we want it to do. Process wait steps, piles of problems off to the side. Now, I don't have enough information to know why those two are together, but you either do, or guess what? You'll find out that they don't go together. Do you see what I mean? Don't worry about getting things wrong, because when you get to this stage, you can't do it if it's wrong. Yeah? Or it becomes meaningless. This is the pot of communication issues. That's not good enough. We need problem statements. So please label up every single one of your clusters, breaking the clusters up if you need to, with one of these red post-it notes. And what you should end up with is every single cluster has its own category description of problem. Yeah? So still write it as a problem statement. Okay? So label your clusters. Yep, just pop it to the side. And this is the one where it's actually quite important to lift it from here, like this, because I'm going to be taking it elsewhere. So just pop it there next to it so it's obvious. That's right, which one it belongs to. Sometimes I do this. What's happened here is you've gone into issue mode rather than demand mode. Yeah, this is not what people are being asked to do. So lack of knowledge, no motivation, rotation of people, insufficient number of staff, insufficient training. These are all issues. It's what it is what people are being asked to do. But it's fine for this exercise. It's fine. But so what I'd say here is the issue seems to be, if I sum all of this, is there is not enough people with the right knowledge and the right enthusiasm to get the work done. Sorry? Well, there you go then. It's tough stuff, this, isn't it? It doesn't make this a big or a small issue. It just makes it an issue. Yeah. Is it the one thing to focus on first? No. I can promise you now, this is always a symptom. Apart from potentially in an extremely fast-growing business. But then you don't normally have that issue. But it's uncomfortable talking about failure, isn't it? Okay. Yeah. So, is that its own category?
I think we were trying to stick it in there, but we already drew it.
Yeah. No. It says double work. So, to my mind, double work is when I either do the work and then I have to rework it because it wasn't right first time, or double work as in accidentally two people are doing the same job. Which one is it? Yeah. Okay. So then it would be a separate category because it's not an effective communication thing. It's not a standardized documentation thing. It's the work is not right first time and has to be reworked. It's a separate issue. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. How are people getting on? Are we nearly there? Just a few more to go. Cool. So normally we would have done 2 or 3 days of data collection, raw, proper data collection. So you'd have quite a lot of, maybe even several thousand of items that you can use to do this with. And one of the advantages of this exercise is if you've got 1,000 data points, all of which are qualitative, getting the whole team just to, literally, I print them out on a piece of paper, we cut them in scissors, and then each person reads it and they just put it into a pile like this. And then once you've done this stage of it, you can just literally write the post-it note name onto an envelope and stick all the bits of paper in it. And then later on, when you can't remember what the heck's in the paper, you can take it all out in the raw data. You haven't lost any of the original raw data. It's very, very powerful because what a lot of companies don't realize is, until you actually measure it properly, that even just a team of 10 people in a typical shared service environment, for example, in the space of 2 to 3 days, you can get somewhere between 800 and 2,000 failure demand requirements. This is not an uncommon number. Yeah, but it's all the small stuff that people just take for granted. The email just saying, "Oh, what's happening with such and such?" Or could you just get this data for me? And somebody gave me this silly example one time. Well, what about pass a stapler? Well, yeah, it's still a failure demand. The person who needed the stapler didn't have a stapler, and therefore they had to stop working to then stop somebody else working in order to pass a stapler. It's all the small stuff. And one example, I was in our own home office in our immigrations department, and there was a lady who had joined, and there were all these really complicated codes, and her job was more or less just taking the immigration application and getting it onto the system and allocating the correct codes. There were so many different codes, she didn't know what they were. There was no standard procedure for the codes, so she'd written her own. But she had very, very limited IT skills. So the way that she'd written it was really, really difficult to search. But she did have all of the codes. So we just spent literally half an hour tidying it up and putting it into a nice searchable Excel spreadsheet for her. we then worked out that that was going to save her about an hour and a half a day. She had a team of 20 people. I then said, hey, does anybody else have a problem remembering which codes to use? And they all said yes. We then shared around the spreadsheet, and it worked out by the end of that half an hour of intervention. I wasn't even meant to be doing this. I was meant to be just finding out what their jobs were, but I couldn't help myself. The end of that saved 1.5 FTE. Just the time searching for a code. Crazy, isn't it? But you'd never get that into a management meeting. It's too small, it's too niche. The team themselves never even knew it was a problem. They were so busy focusing on just getting the backlog done. You know, and this is the mindset. This is why the failure demand is so powerful once you get the hang of it. Okay, let's see how we're doing. We've done over here, we've done over here, we're nearly done here. We'll let you do one more. Have you noticed what's just happened? Did you spot which post-it notes were good enough quality and which ones weren't? Yeah? Which ones could you understand as a team and which ones couldn't you? So notice the process is a self-cleaning process. If you can't get a proper problem statement together for your cluster, then the problem is clearly the original data. Either the data isn't good enough, in which case we need to rewrite the original post-it notes, or maybe the cluster has been incorrectly formed. Did anybody find themselves changing the cluster? Yeah, and suddenly things pulled apart. Yeah, but notice the nature of the dialogue you've just had. Your shared understanding is growing. You're beginning to develop an empathy with the specific problems. And what that's doing is it's priming your brain to get ready for the discussion about what's really matter, what are we going to prioritize. Okay, so if we had an awful lot more data, and I was just giving this table over here the example. In typical 2 to 3 days, normally if I'm doing this formally, just to get things started, I will do a 3-day evaluation of preferably the whole end-to-end team, but if not, the best that I can get hold of. And it's not uncommon for a team of 10 to 20 people to generate in 3 days somewhere between 800 and 2,000 items of failure-driven demand. Just to put it into context. And it's all lots and lots of small stuff. And what we can then do with this process that everybody can be involved in is get it all organized. And then we can count it all up. Now, a frequency measure isn't necessarily the best measure, but it is a measure. Yeah. So you very quickly get to the position where you can say, look, of our 2,000 items, 456 of them all fall under that first category. Yeah? And then over here, we've got 332 in this category. And so on, and so on, and so on, until eventually down here, you've got your single items that were only mentioned once. Now, at this point, we don't have our priority, because that one thing there might be costing the company $20 million a year. and it's something you could fix just now that you've mentioned it. Oh, actually, we can fix that tomorrow. And yes, that has happened to me. Yeah? So don't for a moment assume that just because it's the most common issue, it's the best one to fix first. However, as a general rule of thumb, this is a great place to get started. Okay? And you can work from that. So you can see straight away which of your groups ended up with lots of people saying the similar things, and which ones were just one-offs. Okay, but remember, there's lots of other ways that you can prioritize. You can prioritize in terms of cash, which ones are hurting us, the company, the most. We can prioritize in terms of complexity, which ones look trickiest to fix. Hands up those of you who've got in your groups something relating to IT problems. Yeah, those are the tough ones to fix, aren't we? Because we've spent so many years putting complex systems on top of complex systems. They're a real pain to fix. You know, we might do it, and this is my personal favorite one, in terms of impact on customer. Yeah, which is the thing that if we fix is going to cheer up our customers the most, because they're our future, they're our lifeblood. Yeah, this is a great thing to prioritize against. So you've got frequency, etc. Now, you've still got all the original raw data, so these great big categories you can normally then break back down again into small subcategories. I'll come on to that in a bit. But whichever of these you prioritize probably depends upon what the strategic position of your company is. If you're like the company I was with recently that was growing so fast, its specialists just didn't have time to induct the new staff. You can imagine what that was doing to quality standards. Yeah, they were recruiting as fast as they could, but not training anybody who came in. So clearly, releasing of capacity was going to be a top priority, because we need our top people available to train up these new people so we can maintain the growth. If you're about to go into turnaround and you've got cash flow crises, then maybe cash is your top priority, and so on. This is something that's going to be unique to your business. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is use your data, and we're going to bring all the groups together now. And I'm going to hand around the microphone in a second, and I'd like one table at a time, and one person to be brave, take the microphone, and read out your pink post-it note, and just bring it up here and stick it on one of these two sheets. So if we, I think it's on. Just, yep. So if we just start at this table at the back, yeah? The one, yep. Fantastic. So just bring all your pink post-it notes up and then read them out and stick them up so that people know what you've got. Oh, by the way, at this point, word to the wise, because I've done it wrong before, photograph it. Yeah? All right? Because now's the point where you start taking the pink post-it notes off. And then you go, oh, all that work. Which one goes where? All right, so bring them up, read out what's on the post-it note, and whack it up.
So the first one.
No, well, unfortunately, it's for their purposes, yeah.
So the first one that we have here is related with IT, and this is the simple answer is IT.
Yep. So it's not a problem statement, yeah. So but in the interest of today, we'll move on, yeah.
Next one is related is unclear roles and responsibilities.
Unclear roles and responsibilities, fantastic. It's an issue, not a demand, but I get it, yeah.
We are not following the process or the procedure.
Mm-hmm. Not following the process or procedure. Good.
Insufficient root cause analysis linked to firefighting.
Yep. Nice one. Anybody familiar with these?
Insufficient resources. This is very general, but it affects a lot of processes. Lack of vision. What to do now.
Mm-hmm.
Efficient use of the time due to the existing ways of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And rework due to the dependency of other parties.
Yep. So that was rework due to the dependency on other parties, yeah. In other words, somebody else got it wrong. Yeah. Remember, we don't blame people. Everybody's a good person. They come to work to do a good job. This is all because of the way that we've set up the work. Yeah, okay? It's never a person's fault. Well, almost never. It's very difficult to prove. Okay, thank you very much. You'd like to pass this on to the next table? If you could do the same exercise, please.
We don't have as many. So the one is onboarding and training in effectiveness.
Yep. Okay.
Which I would assume.
Don't worry. Just stick them up anywhere. You can put it down here, up here, anywhere you want.
So you don't want them in a.
Nope. Anywhere you want.
The second one is cascading and sharing information in a constantly changing environment.
Mm-hmm.
Lacking decision-making capabilities. Ineffective systems.
Yeah, it's not another affinity diagram. Don't worry.
Okay. Lack of standardized processes.
Mm-hmm.
And lack of ownership and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lovely. Okay. Next table. Thank you very much. Can see the problem with the post-it notes curling up. when you're trying to photograph them, it's very difficult.
So first thing we have is no standard and documented processes.
Okay.
The next one, guess what? System issues. Another one, not doing something for the first time.
Not doing it right first time, yep.
Ineffective communication. People management.
Yep.
And excessive lead time.
Yep. Okay. Fantastic, thank you. And finally?
So we have team not motivated.
It's the Dutch. It's the Dutch team over there. Actually, where's Shell?
Errors in process causing rework, additional efforts, backlog. Unexpected events causing additional workload.
Yep.
Now, as always, IT system issues. And the final, ineffective communication within organization and across departments.
Excellent. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, so as would be expected, because the exercise I've given you has not given you a chance to collect proper value failure demand data. So what you've naturally done is you've drawn from the symptoms of failure demand. Yeah. Why do we feel some of these things? Why do we feel that there's no standard documenting processes? Well, probably because we have the experience of failure demand as a result of people working the same process in different ways. Yeah. So if we do the root cause back from this, you will find things that are failure demand. IT system issues. Yeah. Did the IT team deliberately design it to go wrong that way? But there was some form of failure demand. That could have been that they were asked to produce the wrong system, or they were asked to produce it to fit a process that didn't work in the first place, and somebody expected it to fit onto an IT system, and so on and so forth. So you can see that although these are very symptomatic, they are all, at the end of the day, they're driven, they're behind them, there is some failure demand. This one here, not doing right for the right first time, that's obviously, that one would be, let's look into the detail. What things are we not doing right first time? So just to try and bring this concept of failure demand a little bit more practical for you, I just want to give you a real life example. Now, don't quote me on these figures because they're off the top of my head, but it's one of the easiest to explain to you. Does anybody live in a house or an apartment? Yeah? Okay. Have you ever had to call out somebody to do a repair, a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter or a roofer? Yeah? Okay. So you all know what I mean by a repairs service, a maintenance service. Okay. Now, there's one repairs service I worked with that had a delay of a minimum delay of 6 weeks, or 2 weeks if it's an emergency. There you go. What's your definition of an emergency repair in terms of response times? How long do you want to wait? An hour. You're very generous. That's my new kitchen being ruined because the bathroom's leaking. Yeah? Do you see what I'm saying? We don't want to wait at all, do we? Yeah? Okay. So, but of course they had their SLAs and they managed to fiddle the figures every month, just like other people who have SLAs do. And they got their way through the system and it looked fine. But the customer complaints were doing up and up and up and up and up. So let's go and blame the outsourced supplier of the repairs. No, let's see if we can fix this. So we did this analysis. The number one thing, the failure demand, was customers phoning up saying, when are you coming to do my repair? Yeah, that was the number one. Symptom or cause? Clearly a symptom. Yeah? Okay. The number two thing, these top three together accounted for 80% of the demand on the system. rearranged my appointment. Yeah, this service believed good customer service was we would set an appointment for when we were going to come and do your repair. Sounds perfectly reasonable, doesn't it? Yeah. The number 2 failure demand was customers phoning up to rearrange an appointment. Why is that failure demand? Doesn't that sound reasonable? If a customer can phone up and say, I'd like you to come at a different time, why is that failure demand? Yeah, that's right. It's if I'd come early enough, if I'd fix it, if I didn't have a big backlog, there would be no need to do the rescheduling. Yeah? When you phone up for a repair, when do you generally want somebody to come? About now. Or possibly tomorrow if now's not convenient and your house isn't flooding or something. Yeah? So it was failure driven because of the delay in the system. Number 3 was failure demand coming from the tradesmen themselves. And what was that? It was the tradesman saying, I need to rearrange because when I went to the house I didn't have the equipment, so I have to do what's called a follow-up. Yeah? Or a follow-on. Okay? Is that what you expect from your repairs organisations? They turn up, they have a look at them, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have a hammer, and they walk back off again, back to the 6-week waiting line. This is how they achieve their SLAs. Yeah, okay. I'm mocking them, but I'm not mocking them. I'm mocking everybody who runs these kind of processes, which, by the way, is probably most companies. Yeah, it's because we lose sight of what matters to the customer, and we build our processes to handle the failure demand as if it's value demand. What matters to the customer? I want you to come and do the repair. I want you to fix it right now or fix it at a time of my convenience, which is probably tomorrow, if not right now. And I want you to fix it right so it stays fixed. Yeah, this is not hard. Was that their KPIs? No. Because if you set those as KPIs, then what happens? Oh, well, we can't achieve those. Those aren't possible. So they thought. Actually, they were possible. So you got these 3 things together. So we look, well, why haven't people got the right kit? Well, let's fix that. Why are people having to wait? Well, let's fix that. We removed all of these sources of delay out of the system. This one was purely systematic. 6-week waiting time with a 30% chance of a follow-on went down to a same day or next day service depending on the customer's requirement with 0 follow-on. Yeah? Which service do you think is cheaper to run? The one that's chock full of failure or the one that you just get the job done? Yeah? The business case for this is staggering. Absolutely staggering. Do you know what the management team said to me 6 months later? After it all settled down and they knew it wasn't going to go away? They said, I've got this problem. I've got all this spare workforce and I don't know what to do with them. Yeah, because I have a no redundancy policy in my world, because you can't get people to stay involved in improvement if they think they're going to lose their job on the back of it. So I said, do you know what? Is there anywhere else in the system where there's people struggling? You know what? Yeah, it's all the big corporate repairs. Well, why don't they go and help them out? Well, that's a good idea. So they went and helped them out. Yeah, so there we go. We reuse the capacity. Now, if somebody retires, then fine. We don't replace them. We cash it then. Yeah, somebody moves on to another job, fine, cash it then. Okay, so, but no redundancies, please. It destroys this straight up. Okay, so does this make sense what I mean by failure demand? Demand to do something that was not right first time. Okay, so, got 15 minutes left just to work this through. We've got this lovely data, but we don't yet have a prioritization process in place, okay? Now, we might have been able to, at this stage, it might have been so obvious, like it was with this housing repairs company, what we needed to focus on, which was the removal of any causes of a follow-on. But in this situation, this is very big, isn't it? So what we can do is something quite straightforward. And over here, we're going to say this is cause. And over here, we're going to say this is effect. Okay. And we can start with any post-it note we want. Actually, I will just move these across over here for a moment. Okay. Now, this won't work particularly well because of the very broad nature of the data, but hopefully you'll get the idea fairly quickly. So just grab this one. We've got lack of standardized processes. Now, I'm just going to stick that right in the middle. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab this one here. Let's just grab this one here. IT systems issues. Now, there's a choice. Either IT systems issues are causing the lack of standardization of our processes, or they're a symptom of the lack of standardization, or they're nothing to do with it. You with me? What do people feel intuitively? Are IT system issues more likely to cause lack of standardized processes, or likely to be a symptom of it, or nothing to do with it? They cause them to be non-standard, right? Okay, and actually, anybody want to argue the opposite? Yeah. If you've got a standardized process, is it not easier then to automate it? Yeah. So in fact, what I would do straight away is I'd rip this post-it note in half, and I'd take your opinion, which I thoroughly agree with, is because we've got IT systems that are not working, people are having to work in non-standard ways to work around the system. So I could produce now a better post-it note, and then behind over on this side, I would say, as a result of IT development teams don't know what it is we're asking them to code.
And when the problem costs 20 million.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Because I know the solution.
Yeah.
I know the solution. It's possible to repair, but costs 20 million.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something obviously wrong with that, isn't there? When for £20 million you can set up a new multi-million pound corporation that goes on to multi-billion pounds. There's obviously something wrong with the design of the IT when that's the case. So we can now pick on another one. Unexpected events causing additional workload. Now here, it's not clear enough in terms of which of the unexpected events, okay? So for the moment, I'll just put that as a separate thing down here. Okay, let's pick the next one. So, ineffective communication. Okay, again, this is not a clear enough post-it note to really work with, but does ineffective communication cause IT systems issues? It can do, can't it? Yeah, but it's also a symptom, isn't it? Because everything's, etc. So, generally speaking, again, depending on what the detail behind this is, you'll find that most communication problems are symptoms. Okay, when you unpick it, what you'll find is that behind ineffective communication might be, and I saw some really good stuff. I think it was on this table. Lack of clear visual management. We can't see how we're doing. If we can't see how we're performing, then how can we fix things? How can we fix things, etc. So generally, I'm putting it over here because generally speaking, that is where it ends up. Team not motivated. Cause or effect? It's an effect, yeah. It's very clearly an effect, isn't it? If there's three very straightforward things that you can focus on from a leadership point of view. If you just want a very simple model to work with, make sure that your team has got worthwhile work to do. Processing failure demand is very hard to stay motivated, yeah? And some of you, no doubt, I've seen many companies have entire teams whose job it is to process failure demand. And then you have to have a very difficult conversation with them and explain to them that 100% of their job is waste. And they get very upset with me. Yeah? And I say, don't worry, mine is too. Yeah? No company would pull me in if everything's going fine, would they? So my job is 100% waste driven. It has to be. Yeah? Okay. So, okay. Not doing right first time. Yeah, this is going to be a symptom. People don't deliberately do things wrong. There's going to be other stuff leading to it. Yeah, we're not following the correct procedures. So again, we're beginning to build up a picture here. Insufficient root cause analysis leading to firefighting. Again, these are all symptom things down here. So you can see because we've focused on issues rather than the failure demand, we're getting a lot of very symptom-based stuff. But if you get the value demand, failure demand analysis done, you will get much more causal stuff, and that's why it's more powerful to do it that way. Insufficient resources, again, could be a symptom of failure demand going round and round. Let's see if I could think of excessive lead time. That's going to be a consequence of insufficient resources or whatever it might be. So do you see what I'm doing? I'm building up this picture where I can see what is to the symptom side and what is to the cause side. I'm just looking to see if I can spot anything. That's another system issue. That's standardized documentation. errors in process causing rework. That's not right first time. Communication between departments. Okay. Lack of ownership and responsibilities. Now that's an interesting one. So lack of ownership, is that causing our system issues? Could be contributing to it, couldn't it? Is it linking to the lack of standardized processes? Very often does. So let's put that one there, you see, and what I do when it's all tidy and I'm happy with the route, I can sort of show that's leading to that and that's leading to that, but that's also leading to that. Do you see how I'm start building a picture? And these things together are all leading to all of these things. Yeah. And you can see suddenly a picture begins to form that allows you to see the cause and effect relationships between all of this data. Now, in the interest of time, because I need to finish fairly quickly, what I would do as the next step, once I've done all of this, is I take my marker pens. Yep. And typically, these are the colours you've got. Occasionally, you've got green as well. But typically, these colours are available. So this is what I use. And I go, right, pure symptom. Right, so if we fix all the other problems, the lead time issue will go away. And if we fix the other problems, then we'll have a motivated team. So anything that's just pure symptom, and it relatively impactable is within my gift to fix, I mark up as a green or a black. And then I'm going, right, okay, standardized processes, well, you know what, that's a bit tough. There's a reason we haven't got standardized processes. We can't just suddenly go and write them because it'll be yet another corporate initiative to get us to follow the process. Yeah. So it's not as straightforward as all that. It's not something we can directly impact on, but it's something we can strongly influence. So that's a blue thing. And the IT systems issues, yeah, it's $20 million, but we could spend that $20 million. By the way, you don't need to, I tell you that now. There are other ways of fixing it without doing that. But anyway, lack of ownership and responsibility, we own that one. But occasionally, but that's going to be hard to fix because it's very political maybe, or it's very stretching across into other departments. But eventually you'll come to a line, because I'm afraid, like it or not, there are going to be post-it notes that are driven by particularly two groups of people that are very, very difficult to get rid of the root causes from. The first one is, sorry? No, IT's in your gift, is your customers. Yeah? How many customers like to hear from you, unless you've already got a strong working relationship in terms of improvement? How many want to hear that they're causing the problems they're blaming you for? On the whole, they tend to be a bit touchy about that. Now, most of the projects I run, I do insist on getting the customers in the room as part of the project, because usually they are driving a whole bunch of the failure demand, incorrect specifications, failing to approve orders, not getting the purchase order process working along with the sales process, you name it. Their customers are a nightmare. Remember, particularly from a finance point of view, the customer is not the customer, they're the supplier of the money, you're the customer. Yeah, just never forget that. This is a really important distinction. Yeah, okay. And the other one is governments. Yeah. Now, just to put things into context for you, I did exactly the exercise that we've just done over the last hour, with a lot of good data to start with. We've done that 3 days of analysis work. But here was the basic problem we're trying to solve. Why do young people who have been taken into care at the age of 18 struggle to move on into their own house, education, employment and training, and not end up prostitution, drugs, homeless, prison? Yeah. At the start point of this project, 18 out of 20 children within they were young adults by this point, within 4 years would fall into one of those 4 categories or dead. Yeah, that was our start point. Now that's real failure demand, isn't it? That's just awful. Yeah. 1 year later, 18 out of 20, by the age of 18, were able to live in their own properties and were in education, employment or training, and stable, and stayed there, and were no longer taking any money directly from the government. Yeah, by doing this exercise. and spending a lot of time asking them what services they really needed rather than the ones they were currently getting. But we had to have the relationship with them first. So even the government stuff can be changed, but that's really difficult to change. Customers, they can be changed provided the data's in their favor. So the point being is as you get along, you will find these connections into your cause-effect flow of these things, and you will say, right, okay, this one here is built into the contract with our customer. Can we change that or not? Can we change it? If we can, then we ought to, because it's in the customer's best interest if we are more successful. If the answer is no, we can't, we have to build a gate. And that gate means, given that the customer is giving us poor data, what can we do to clean it up before it goes anywhere into the system and causes further trouble? Yeah? But that's always the fallback position. You don't want to go for it. Changing government policy, yeah, or changing GAP, for example, generally accepted, that's not going to happen overnight. So you don't really want to be focusing there. So now look where your prioritization comes in. Over a period of time, I'll just put these together. I'll just make up a story here. Okay, so we've got, so this is leading to that, and that's leading to that, and that's leading to that, as well as to that, etc., and that's leading to that. What I can do is I can choose, I can just literally look through all of these, where I think I can impact, and I could say, if I fix that one and that one, can you see from the way I've just quickly pulled this together, if I fix that and that, all of those will necessarily must get better. There'll be less failure demand. So the question becomes, what can I do to fix these two problems? And I can only do one thing at once. So which one of these should I get started on first? Here's a hint. Choose the easiest. Yeah, to get started with, because you're building your skill level. And yes, so you're going to have to do some influencing. That's where the management team's so crucial. But now, what you can do is you can go to the management team and say, because it might be a totally different department to yours, it might be over in marketing where the problem's happening, or it might be over in R&D, or whatever it might be. You can go along and say, look, here's the picture, here's the data. We've got all of these problems, which is costing us this much of our capacity and effort and time, and and we've worked it all back and through, and if we could just unpick that thing and that thing, all of these will get better. Do we know they'll all get perfect? No, we don't know that. They might, but we don't know it. But we know for a fact that fixing these two things, all of these will become better, and they'll certainly become easier to fix. So then, what you've got is an evidence-based dialogue that shows, if we improve this, then that will get better, and this, if we improve this, that will get better, and then these will get better, and then these will get better. You're getting the system to work for you. So instead of you working against the system, you get the system to work for you. Yeah? And get that vicious circle to turn into a virtuous circle. Yeah? And that's when you get all of your capacity back that's been wasted, or in due course you get it all back. It's when you get the motivation coming back because people feel in control again. It's when you start getting your cash back in ways that you didn't even expect because customer morale goes up, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we've just got a couple of minutes to, apologies for the late start, but I don't want to delay the next session from starting. So I'd just like to ask yourselves to reflect for a couple of minutes, and then maybe time for 2 questions. Obviously, I'll be available for the rest of the workshop, the rest of the conference.
Actually, I have one question, especially to what you just mentioned. If you lay this out to the management, senior management, in theory, this is fine. In practice, I have to say that you will have to justify every single point that leads to another point.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a very good question, and you're right. Normally the first time I do this with a management team, that's exactly what they want. I love it. I love it for the same reasons that when you were all working together, you were discussing. Yeah? You were working together, you were developing a shared understanding. If you think about it for a minute, if you make a decision to change something without understanding what you're trying to change, how dangerous is that decision? So I would rather have the argument and the debate and the discussion, even if it holds us back a further week, because at the end of that, either the management team understand this, or there's something wrong with it, in which case we all understand it better. Yeah? Now, if at the end of it, the management team say, oh, well, I don't want you to focus on that and that, because maybe it's a little bit too politically sensitive, or it just feels like too big, you just go down the step. Yeah? And the same logic applies. You put in the gate here instead. Given that we know that the company is going to continue creating that source of failure, yeah, we can use language like this now. We've chosen to keep that failure in the company. Then, how do we make sure that that problem is gated and we're cleaning it at the earliest possible point? This is the magic. Any process design, you want to try and make sure that you're cleaning it, the failure demand, as close to the front as you can. If those of you who are familiar with Toyota, the concept of the andon cord, as soon as somebody spots any form of waste or failure, you pull the cord, the whole factory line stops. Yeah, because it's better to do that than it is to pass failure down into the system. Yeah, okay, good question. Next question, one more question.
Most of us, we face problems with the processes. We have gaps that we will want to resolve them.
Yeah.
We work nowadays, mostly it's very common that we work with third parties within our organizations. And when we are involved in a process that this third party was responsible first to build, to manage this part of the process.
Yes.
And then all us, we start to get involved on this. To resolve the problem, basically we need to go to the people that in the beginning of this process
Yes.
were managing this specific part.
Yes.
And we go there and they don't work anymore in our organization.
No.
We have a lack of documentation or any kind of support that
Yep.
don't take us exactly for the route that we want to go. To the route that we want to go.
Yeah.
So here is, as far as I understand, basically is where most of us we are facing issues that
Yeah.
okay, we know where is the problem, but we don't have anyone that could help us to resolve this because this person that knew it is not anymore working.
Right. So are you saying you understand the root cause of the problem? Yeah, because the next stage after this is once you've selected which one of these, that's when you start your root cause work. You're saying you've done that, you've done the root cause work, and now you have no idea how to fix it. Great question. Different presentations of this. This is about making sure we're fixing the right thing in order. However, what you're now into the realm of is innovation solution design. Okay, and there's a lot I could say on that, at least for another hour. But you guys have got to go somewhere else. But if it's an engineering-y type problem, there's some very, very good tools and techniques that you can use to fix them. If it's something which is very common now, it's embedded IT issues that are just all the way back. You've got a difficult thing. Options are come up with creative solution, i.e. that does actually fix it. So just beat your way through the problem. Number 2, create the workaround, which leaves waste locked in. And number 3 is start again with a new process that doesn't have the problem built in. Amazingly, in my experience, that third one is usually the cheapest and easiest. Now, sometimes that's just simply not possible. If you spent £55 million investing in an SAP system for a global ERP and then it turns out it's not doing what you want it to do, it's very difficult to go to the shareholders and say, you know what, we're actually going to turn it off and move back to SharePoint. So I do appreciate it's a difficult one, and the answer is it depends on the situation, I'm afraid. There's lots of different things. There's always something you can do, though. Yeah, there. Okay. Hopefully that's been a useful and interesting session. Hopefully it's pulled together some skills you already had and built upon those in useful ways. And obviously I look forward to your feedback in coffee breaks and so forth. Thank you. Yeah, I know.